study the immune system, what I see is one of the biggest fear-mongering hoaxes taking place.
Yeah. Wow.
Destroy the economy, aim to suppress dissent, and mandated vaccines. And that's what you're seeing play out. That's exactly what's going on. And Fauci,
what people fail to realize is you're getting that money now, but when that money run out, you're going to get less of that and less of that. And then before you know it, we're going to be a third world country.
Right.
I have a question, Dr. Shiva. Okay. So I understand that they're doing all of the testing. Okay. And understand what they're looking for in a test. Are they called like exosomes? They are like something that naturally is inside of our body.
Yeah. So there's things called exosomes. Okay. So I know there's some videos out there, but to keep it simple, all right, they're looking for a piece of, imagine, nucleic acid sequences that match that, those pieces of that ladder, okay, that match that, what they claim is from COVID-19.
But this is something that is like a natural occurrence within our body anyway.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is this could occur in many parts of our body. It could already exist. And what I'm saying is that's why the creator of the polymerase chain reaction test, Kary Mullis, who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, said this test for searching for these things, these pieces, right, is itself not quantitative. It's qualitative. Qualitative means someone could make a subjective decision. Okay, it's not a quantitative test. It's not like definitive. It's not like
it's the final say. So this test said it is the final say.
So when you have people out there with underlying conditions, let's say diabetes, high blood pressure, diseases, etc., within their bodies, your body give off this particular exosome or cells to help protect itself from the immune system. So my question is that part of the puzzle that they're looking for whenever they're doing the test?
Well, so let's look at it this way. When someone is immunocompromised, which can occur in many ways, like you just said, they have other pre-existing conditions. What does that mean? At some point, it affects your immune system. Right. When your immune system is compromised, in some way, your body is going to pick up all sorts of different viruses, right? Or all sorts of other particulates, right? Which start growing because you're in a compromised state. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is that test is not definitive. It's not definitively getting that. So it could be getting false positives, right? It could be reading other things in your body, which, by the way, in this polymerase chain reaction, they magnify. So if there's something little, they magnify it and they associate it. So the entire process is not a definitive test. It's not a definitive. Now an antibody test, which just came, I just saw a report on this, I think in California, they said around 3% have it. So it's much less than what they actually thought when you do an antibody test. So the number of people they have this is much, the infection rate is much less than what they actually thought. Mm. But I think the most important thing to understand here, forget viruses for a second. Let's just put that aside.
Right.
Let's just forget that. Because part of this discussion is to get away from this fundamental truth that the immune system is a very resilient system. And the issue is, how do you support resilience? That's what we should talk about. Viruses are always going to come and go. What happens next? What's going to happen next? What is going to be like a next, annual TV show? Next year, right? Virus number COVID 29. Then next year, COVID 55. And then we're going to, you see what I'm saying? Is this what the world is going to become? And that's what they're trying to tee us up for. You see, they want to psychologically tune us. Oh my God, the virus is going to attack you and destroy you. Look.
But it's something that's already in you. It's something you.
Well, no, it's everywhere. A virus, it's in us, but it's also new viruses come and go. The viruses.
You build up an immunity to it. That's where the
antibodies
come from.
There, now you're talking. Now you're talking.
Okay.
What we want to talk about is, Silk, how do you build your immunity?
Right.
Like with the vitamin D, how it builds up.
Yeah, and there's many things. So if you go back to the 1900s, if you go back to, remember when there was a time when we had lots of infectious diseases. Mm-hmm. People used to live in close quarters, right? They were unhygienic. Well, if you go back to the 1900s, the number one, I think there's about 14 to 40 out of 100,000 people had infectious diseases. Well, that number precipitously dropped by 1950, 1960 to almost a half a person out of 100,000. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Massive drop. Well, how did that occur? That occurred because of something very important: nutrition, vitamin A. We ended child labor. We had sanitation. We had refrigeration. Basically, the sanitation worker and the plumber did more for bringing down infectious diseases. And this is long before vaccines. Like by the time the measles vaccine was created, 98% of measles was gone. Okay?
Right.
So let's understand that. So we talked about clean air, clean water, clean food when we started. Fundamentally, it has always been infrastructure, public infrastructure, and us taking nutrition, which has really reduced infectious diseases. That's the core. Well, what do we have today? The United States, as President Trump pointed out, had a D+ in infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems falling apart. Companies like Monsanto polluting our soil. That is a new infrastructure problem we have. The politicians, the lawyer lobbyists don't want to discuss that. The swamp does not want to discuss that. Hillary Clinton does not want to discuss that because she took money from Monsanto. All right? They don't want to discuss that. But then they want to act as though they care about our public health. They don't give a damn about our public health. Because if they did, they would be shutting down the country with 30% obesity. They'd be shutting down the country. We have 600, 700,000 people per year dying of heart disease. They would be shutting down the country because of all the cancer. They would be shutting down the country because 1.9 million people get hospitalized every year from prescription drug adverse reactions. We don't see them doing that.
No.
Because they don't care about public health. As you said, Diamond, it is another agenda. And the agenda is big pharma is failing and they need a market. Now they're teeing it up. They're teeing it up where we're also scared that we will say, yes, vaccinate me, please vaccinate me. Yes, and also go make sure Diamond and Silk get vaccinated, your neighbors. I don't want them walking around. That's the environment that they're creating. Now they have a 7.2 billion people in the planet who will all be forced vaccinated with an immunity card. And this may sound crazy, but this is where it's going. And that's what Fauci's teeing this up for.
Right. We see that there is something happening. But let me ask you this here. How do people build their immune system so when these viruses and stuff come out, we can handle it?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, let's go to what we always have known. Let's go back to Mother Nature, okay? The number one thing, there's something, as I mentioned, called the sun. The sun is where all life comes from in terms of physical life, right? What does the sun do? The UVB radiation comes. Our body creates vitamin D. Vitamin D, particularly D3, is very important. That vitamin, Diamond and Silk, and by the way, the unfortunate thing is most MDs don't even learn this. They're very sad. Medical school education is all big pharma based. But when that vitamin D comes into you, your body will create a chemical called cathelicidins. You know what these cathelicidins are? They actually bust up the cell walls of those viruses. They protect you. They're your fighters. So vitamin D, number one, boost your immune system. And in the letter to the president, I actually laid out how much you should give people who are under distress and how much you give people, let's say, who are everyday people are pretty good shape. You give around 5,000 to 10,000 IUs. Vitamin C, extremely important, particularly for those people critically ill. Think about what they're doing with the ventilators. People are coming in, let's say they're critically ill, their lungs are starting to fill up with fluid, and now you're sending high pressure air in there, which is going to further destroy the lungs. That's why only 10% of those people survive who go on ventilators. It has been shown over and over and over again in ICUs that minimum 10 to, you got to give a big dose, 10 to 20 grams of vitamin C every 6 hours. I in the protocol for the president, I said 100 grams, over a day. But even if you want to take the 10 to 15, what it does is vitamin C is amazing. It first of all reduces inflammation. It lets your immune system modulate itself so it's not attacking itself. It also makes sure that your body eats up all the free radicals. It's quite amazing. And it stops viral replication. Okay?
Wow.
Very much like hydroxychloroquine. What's that?
I said just an orange can help do that?
Well, not just an orange. You need, what I'm saying is for people who are critically ill, you need to give them a high dosage, right? Those people. But for all of us on a maintenance dose, look, ideally you want to get everything from foods. You want to get stuff from the sun. You want to get stuff from the dark green, leafy, purple foods or rich vegetables. You know why? Those vegetables your body makes to create vitamin A. And vitamin A literally builds beautiful sort of walls. We say build the wall. It builds walls around each of your cells and it protects you. So the virus can't even get in. These are using cytokeratinization. So vitamin A builds the walls. Vitamin D provides you like the rifle to take out the virus. And then vitamin C, modulates your immune system as an antimicrobial. These are just basics. I mean, there's many other things we could talk about. The reason I put that in there was this is something everyone can afford. We're talking about everyday Americans who don't have a lot of money. Vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin A, these are things that you can get. Ideally, you get them from the fruits and vegetables and the vitamin C. But isn't it amazing that the head of the infectious diseases, Fauci, all that airtime he has, not one word about vitamin C, not one word about vitamin A, not one word about vitamin D, not one word. That's criminal. And he knows, yeah.
He knows that. But let me just ask you this here. Even with people with pre-existing conditions, because the one thing that the doctors made it known the other day is that African American are disproportionately affected by COVID-19 because of the pre-existing conditions. So people with pre-existing conditions, could the vitamin D and the vitamin C, those things help them?
Definitely. Look, the unfortunate thing is people of color in this country, right? Because this is a political thing. We never really address infrastructure issues in this country, right? We never really supported the infrastructure of the inner cities. We essentially hurt people's, immune systems and all those things because we never supported people at the infrastructure level. We did giveaways like affirmative action, which were never the real solution. So instead of doing that, instead of supporting infrastructure, so African Americans, people who are poor, typically have more pre-existing conditions. Some of it's genetic, but most of it's epigenetic. So yes, there's a disproportionate number of them who are going to show up into the ICUs because they have a history of conditions brought to them by the fact not all of African Americans can afford, organic food, right? You can afford it in Malibu. You can talk a good game there, but not everyone else can. Yeah. Not everyone else can get access to the education. So one of the things I'm doing is, I want to teach people how the body works as a system. So I've started training people on this. We give it away if people can't afford it. But if people start understanding the body's an interconnected system, it begins with knowledge. The second thing is, if we're eating a lot of refined, sugars and the refined carbohydrates, which is part of a lot of the African American diet, then you basically are creating situations where your body, it goes into all these disease states. But it's really unfortunate because the typical doctor doesn't even have a nutrition course, right? Think about that. They can't advise their, patient how to eat, how foods affect their body, or even create that consciousness in them. Right. So it's not. So that's why I'm saying the liberal Democrats will try to make this a race issue. Right. They always try to, right? And they'll try to use that against the president. It's not a race issue. It's a much more of a fundamental issue. You never addressed infrastructure, and you disproportionately did not address infrastructure in Black and poor neighborhoods. That's what you didn't do. And then you say, oh, people have pre-existing conditions. No, you never address the fundamental issues. Because when the Civil Rights Act took place and when the movement took place, we threw a few bones. We said, don't use this word and give affirmative action. We never built the conditions of the inner cities.
And if they built the inner cities, it was with projects, is what it was.
Exactly. It was,
they threw you in a project and they made a project, gave you a Focus Hope cheese and some peanut butter with oil on it. But no vegetables, no fruit. No,
and jams and jellies. Do you know the FDA? One of the things we started, one of the projects I did to help the food industry was everyone is saying, can you create a seal for clean food? So I ended up doing it as a labor of love. We created a new seal. You'll see it in some of the products. It's called Clean Food Certified. It means it has to be non-GMO. It has to be organic. It has to be high bioavailability, nutrient dense. We have a seal. So it's a very cool thing. But one of the things is that as a part of creating that, one of our women entrepreneurs called me. She said, hey, Shiva, I would like to get the seal. I go, what do you do? She goes, I make jams and jellies. I go, where are you? She goes, we're in Texas. She goes, I only pick the berries. I get them. And very small entrepreneur. And she said, do you know that the FDA will not allow anything to be tagged as jam or